I don't know if we caught that or not. Oh, goodness. Was trying to go live. All right, looks like we're live now. So, thank you everybody for watching. Appreciate it. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. Otherwise, smash that like button. Today, we've got some cool topics. We're going to talk about the winter to spring transition, pre spawn, spawn, the beginning stages, and I'll talk a little bit about McClure, but I'm fishing a tournament there this Saturday, so we'll kind of talk in generals as well. I've got the video coming out. I did all right today solo. I might have been in the realm of perhaps cashing a check, but probably not. I think I needed like another pound or two. I think I would have done pretty decent. If I would consider what everybody else has been doing in the tournaments. So I mean, I'm happy that I caught fish. I had fun. It was a struggle and it was tough, but figured them out. And so with that, we're gonna give it a rest. Friday, I'm not doing nothing out there, so Saturday's the big day. We'll go out there and hopefully crack them. But we're gonna talk about La Nina a little bit again and how that affects jet stream, weather, temperature, all that, and it affects the fishing. It affects the drought cycle, our snowpack, which greatly affects how these lakes fish. We have a seasonal weather system here called El Nino and La Nina, and they're like four to, I think, 6 or 7 or whatever it is. There's cycles, and the jet stream flips, and the cold air gets diverted basically one way or another. And so during La Nina, we get the warm weather and drought, and the East Coast and down south usually get a lot worse. While El Nino, we get the nasty weather, and they have a more mild time. So, Tornado Alley always gets screwed basically, right? They're right in the middle, where everything shifts and moves. But anyways, this affects fishing big time. So also, we're going to talk a little bit about we're in a solar maximum. So I just found out apparently we're in a solar maximum, and those cycles last about 11 years, and the solar maximum will be peaking in 2025. So hey, Gerbs, what's going on? Nice to see you on tonight. So with this solar maximum, it's going to be peaking in 2025, and then winding down. So if it's not even at its peak now, that means probably 2028, 2029 is still going to be pretty bad, but then it'll start going into a cooling stage. So for these next 5-6 years, we're in a solar maximum, means we're going to get a ton of UV rays. The weather's probably going to be unseasonably warm. So just, take care of yourself out there. Talk about how that affects fishing too. But basically, skin cancer, make sure you stay covered up. I know fishing can get brutal in the summertime, which is why when the weather turns really hot and it's just bluebird skies, boiling hot outside, may I recommend picking up night fishing. It is one of my favorite things to do and one of the best ways to catch big bass. So, anyways, we're going to be talking about those things, lots of stuff, the lake turnover, and the winter to spring transition, all that good stuff. So, little side note: Lake McClure was at 58 degrees today at the end of the day in 2 certain locations, and there were fish in like a foot of water in certain locations. So there were also fish in 50 or 60 feet of water. It was one hell of a tough nut to crack. So depending on where you're at, what part of the lake, there's fish all over that lake right now, but they're predominantly in the arms and coves and cuts. There's fish traveling on the main body, but they're basically traveling fish right now. They're looking for creek arms and things like Cotton Creek, Temperance Creek, Piney, and up by not Hatch Creek, up by Horseshoe Bend, and in any of those like little like drains or washes when you see coming down the side of the mountain that kind of slope in. There's a bunch of them over by Barrett's. There's one nice little area where like there's a cement ramp. That's all going to be nice spawning flats right there. There's a lot of areas they're going to be headed to. So right now, it's winter, but it's been unseasonably warm for like the last 3 weeks or so. Normally in late January, it should be freezing freaking cold, and in February, it should be freezing cold. We were in the 60s with the lows in the mid 40s, maybe upper 40s for like the last month almost. Now we've been in the dang near in the 70s for like the last week, and we're gonna hit 80 degrees, I think, this Saturday. And we're gonna stay up towards that for a while. So, even if it drops down and we get some more cold weather, we just have way too much warm sun. We just have way too much heat for this time of year, and we don't have any rain, right? So the lakes, they're steadily, like, slowly rising or staying at about the same level, because there is because of all this heat, you get some snow melt that's starting to come into the lake, but we don't have a ton of snow directly around the lake. It's only coming in via the river system, which is still just bone dry. So there's just not a lot of water coming into McClure right now from all the different various creeks and channels and things that feed into it. So um, it's unseasonably warm right now in a lot of the lakes. Some of the lakes, obviously a lot colder than other areas. So, but yeah, so sorry, just got a message. But you know, that lake is a tough cookie to crack sometimes, for sure. But in general, right now, in all of these mother lode lakes, the fish are starting to scatter. No bueno in the summer. It's way too hot. The best thing is go at night, man. So we'll take a little side street down night fishing lane. In the summertime, if you go fishing at night, it's almost perfect weather, and you can fish all night up until the sun comes up. And by 5 o'clock in the morning, it might be 70 degrees, 68, maybe a little chilly. You can have a light sweater for the night. Other than that, I mean, you can fish all night long in a t-shirt. Um, and the cool thing about summertime is the fish are extremely active. In the daytime, they can be top water, they can be suspended, they can be on the bottom, they can be in 50 feet of water, they can be in 1 feet of water. They're just active and all over the place, chasing bait fish, eating crawdad, bluegill, hatchlings, all kinds of crap. There's all the baby bass in the lake that they're going to town on, all the 1 to 2 pounders. All the bigger fish are eating other things, crawdads, bluegill, crappie, trout, right? Stuff like that. And even a big fish will eat little fish too. It's just they're not going to go chasing them down. It's more opportunity style. But right now, this time of year, the fish are waking up. Let's say they've been doing that for, I think, the last week or two. They're lifting off. You can see them, and they're starting to move. They're starting to move up in different locations, and in others, they're still down there, but they're kind of like, you can tell they're kind of activating, because before they're still on the bottom, but they're not smack dab on the bottom anymore. So you can see them a little better on your fish finder. And you can actually see them down in 50, 60 feet of water or so, and be like, okay, there they are. And, position yourself and fish correctly and get them. But in the summertime, man, those fish are like, so right now they're all over the place, but in the summertime, they can be all over the place. And at nighttime, the great thing about summertime and at night is all the fish move up shallow. Almost the entire lake just pulls up to the shallows, because that's where all the feeding frenzies at. It's where all the bait goes. It's where all the big fish go, and they're still eating. They're just doing it at night. They'll and some of the biggest fish too, I think, become extremely intelligent because they get pressured. These lakes see 100 boats on them: Nugent, BBT, Western, this, that. Every little boat club with a 20 to 40, 50 boats, and the big boat clubs with 80 to 100 and something, and the occasional monster tournament come through, almost a 200 boater, right? These lakes get pounded worse than like a streetwalker, man. It's all bad. These lakes just get hammered, right? It wasn't really that they got so much pressured before. So at night in the summer, these fish open up. It's like a whole new world. It's the funnest. It's just the funnest stuff I could explain. So I talked about it a lot last year. I'm sure I'll talk about it this year. I'm going to try to pimp out the boat with some LED lights. I'm going to get a light set up so that when I get a nice one, I can hit record and hit the light and then actually illuminate everything, catch the fish, show it so it looks like it's almost daytime. You can see everything, and then turn the lights back off. I fish in the dark. I don't fish with any lights illuminated. I'm just chill, floating and drifting. And nighttime in the summer is usually something like that dinner brought yum yum spaghetti and some like Italian bread. But yeah, you can crank bait and jig and spinner bait and moving top water, all kinds of crap, bottom bounce, whatever you want. They're just summertime is awesome. I got a double digit last year in the summer night fishing, so it was awesome. Can't wait to hopefully smack them this year. But anyways, winter to spring transition. In the wintertime, a lot of the time these bass are on the main body, on the main lake, and they're going to be holding on main lake points or in little cuts and coves where they can pin bait fish. And they'll also be in little mini creeks or even in big ones, but they'll be where they can kind of towards the main body. That's where they'll usually be, towards those main lake points, and they'll kind of dam off those bait fish and they can go in and feed when they want. Bait fish will never be able to get out. The bass will just be sitting there, pinning them in. And depending on the size of the creek, they may be more up it or right there at the mouth. If it's just a little mini cut, like a little cove, but a sharp one, almost like a little creek where it goes back a little bit. So, but it's on the main body, not like off some crazy place. And they're also upriver. You can catch them in the big spots in the fresh incoming river upriver, in the fresh water, fresh incoming water upriver. And largemouth will be up there too occasionally. They'll do some crazy stuff. So I catch largemouth in McClure a lot of the time down south, more towards McClure Point, the dam, Cotton Creek, and the more of the Horseshoe Bend sometimes too, but most of Bagby, past Horseshoe Bend, the Narrows, and stuff like that. Usually, most of McClure is a spotted bass fishery now, anyways. Targeting those largemouth, it can be basically just luck or either knowing what you're doing there. Like largemouth are almost always on structure there. So they're not usually, sometimes they're off out with the spots too, out in the middle of nowhere. So it's awesome. I will pull 3 to 5 pound largies out occasionally, especially during certain times of the year when we're sitting on the boat club, McClure Point, be out there in 50, 60 feet of water, or look like it's 300 feet and you're really in 50 or 40. Well, appreciate it, Silvera. Yeah, thanks for the prayers and well thoughts. It's tough times right now, man. Life ain't on easy mode. Let's just say that way. I'm juggling and playing on hard mode right now, but I'm a upbeat guy, and I try to keep the glass half full mentality. So it helps when you guys support. Give me some encouragement. It's just also helps. So thank you guys. But yeah, um, I know that right now. So what I was talking about fishing wise is that these bass are usually right there on the main body, right? How do you choose the color for the baits? So the color for the baits depends on two factors for me. Two main factors is what kind of bait is in that body of water predominantly, and then the water clarity. It's those two simple factors. So if the water clarity is usually semi clear to clear, and there's shad and there's trout and stuff like that, I really like to use pinks, light pinks like Morning Dawn, stuff like that, Margarita Mutilator. They just have seemed, out of all of the colors, they've really outperformed like the white and blues, the shad looking stuff like that. That does good sometime in the sun. It's weird in the summertime when the fish go really deep. They'll kind of like that sexy shad. drop shot. But again, so it's water clarity and it's how deep I'm fishing. A couple of different factors. So, like for example, McClure, New Maloney's, and Don Pedro. If the water is clear, my favorites are going to be Margarita, Mutilator, and Morning Dawn, stuff like that. If those same lakes, but the water's dirty, I tend to go to something that's like green pumpkin, like that's slightly greenish and brown, that's kind of realistic, but it has a darker shade to it, so it has more contrast and the fish can see it in the dirtier water. So like this time of year right now, when there's all this fresh incoming water, there's not a lot, but there's some, right? And the water gets a little dirty, even though these are clear water lakes. See, bass anglers on the East Coast, so there's a difference. I figure most of the people watching me are local, but if you're watching from a different area, water clarity, a lot of people consider clear water like 2 or 3 feet of visibility or more. And sometimes that's the Delta, and that's not clear water. I mean, I've seen the Delta clear, but you guys get my point. McClure, sometimes you can see down 10, 20 feet. So again, McClure has different stages. Now, when I'm fishing deep, I like to go with a darker purple. So I forget what the name of it is, but like browns too, dark browns. Like I think it's Aaron's Magic. There's a robo worm that's really like dark purple. I forget the damn name right now. It's slipping me. But I like to go to a darker color, just as if the water was dirty, but I'm keeping it with that same kind of color scheme in the pink and purple realm. But I'm using like a darker shade. And because the realism basically is what I'm going for. And sometimes those shad will have like a shimmery rainbow look to them, right? They could throw off that color. And when they can see really good, I like those. But then the deeper you go, the darker the color I want a little bit. And when I'm fishing shallow, again, it's all water clarity. So if the water's dirty, I'm going with black, blue, purple, dark green, dark brown. And then in weird occasions when none of those colors seem to work, or I see everybody's bottom bouncing, I like to throw things. These are my three favorites that are off that I think a lot of people don't throw. Is I'll throw orange, I'll throw pink, and I'll throw bright ass red. And I'll throw those three a lot during the summer, post spawn and pre spawn. It just, for some reason, sometimes it seems to like enrage or annoy the fish or catch its attention more. I don't know. It's hard to explain it, but like I've fished with guys and we're using the same worm and the bite's what it is. And I'll pull out like an orange or a pink worm and just start tearing them up. So that's a little thing I do every once in a while. I haven't done it in a while, but I do prefer to use some really crazy colors when the bite gets real tough. You can experiment with that. But yeah, so those are my favorite. Robo worms, and RTS is good, and a couple of different drop shot worm. And really, too, don't be afraid to wacky rig a drop shot. Don't be afraid to drop shot crawdad baits. Don't be afraid to drop shot. Another thing is if you got a ton of wood, but you see fish in it and you want to catch them, here's a little tip for you. Take a big skip gap hook that you would normally Texas rig, right? And put a Cinco, a lizard, a brush hog, whatever you want on it, and tie it with a leader and use it like a drop shot. In and out of the trees all day. And you can pop it up and down, up and down. You can suspend it and float it and move it around. And then when you get bit, you just lay into them instead of lift and reel, just like you would a Texas rig. But instead of a Texas rig covering more water, and then the way that it falls and moves, and you can suspend a drop shot. So, I think they call it power shotting. I don't know. I thought I had invented it because I had no clue the other guys were doing that, and I've been doing that for a while. So I'll take a large, hook that I would use Texas rig style, and throw on a Cinco or a brush hog or something and drop shot that, and then that's great for when you're fishing in cover. So, for example, sometimes when when the fish are right up in the wood and in the trees and in the laydowns, and you know they're there, but it can be real tricky to get them without getting snagged. That's a killer little tricky technique that you can use to put the lure right on the bed. Say the bass is like right next to a laydown in a branch, and with almost anything, you're going to hook that fish and get snagged. Or you're going to get snagged trying to hook that fish with like a drop shot or something, right? But you can take weedless, hook up a big old Texas rig, right? Nothing too big, but like a Cinco, a brush hog, whatever you want, and drop that sucker on that bed inside of that tree and just wiggle it and shake it. And if they don't bite and you need to reel, you can just reel that sucker right on out. You just have to watch how you pop it, because that weight can act like a little whip and snag up a lot if you don't, if you pull it out wrong. So you got to watch how you do that, but that'll come in handy this spawning season. Trust me, if you see bass on the bed and they're really hard to get and they're in like the Delta, one way to target them is like drop shot a big Cinco or something. And if you see their bed, you can put that drop shot weight and keep it right on their bed and annoy the shit out of them, but have this nice big Cinco dangling there so that you don't cast at it, drag it through the bed, and then have to make another cast. You just leave that sucker there and just piss them off till all eternity, but you can still get motion and movement by occasionally lifting and moving the tip of your rod, but yet the weight stays pinned, right? So and because of all the weeds and junk, that weedless style power shot really works great at the Delta and places like Pedro if you're fishing in Big Creek or where there's a bunch of wood and stuff like that. Same thing with McClure because it's so low right now. There's a ton of wood and piney. There's wood and cotton. So you fish those laydowns and you can get right up next to them with stuff like that, So, but anyways, winter to fall transition. My bad, I got off. But I love when you guys ask questions. I get a chance to just tell you how I feel. I'm not a pro. I don't claim to know it all or that my way is the right way. It's just what I do. Little things that I've picked up from friends of mine, from other people I've fished with, watching videos, and then just, figuring stuff out on my own. So I like to share. And then if you already knew it, great. But it's just, this is also a cool way for people to hang out. We talk fishing and have a good time. And cool little community here. We have each other's back. So appreciate everybody watching. Smash that like button if you get a chance. Usually we do these Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 7 to 9. But I wanted to get on because I've been missing so many. So we'll do this one tonight. I don't know if I'm going to get on tomorrow. I think I will be. And then Saturday I'll have a tournament. I should be having 2 videos. The new Maloney's videos should be coming out. So if you guys want to check that out, again, members are going to get early access. So I'm going to push it out probably tomorrow and get that to the members so you guys can watch that. And then within a few days, once I've had it, given the members enough time to watch it, then we'll put it out there for everybody to watch. But we destroyed them at New Maloney's with 2 different people. I already did the video with me and my son. And then I took a guy named Chris, and then I took my buddy Jay. So tight lines, Robert. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. But so I did those 2 trips. So those will be out. And then my McClure trip will come out right after my tournament. So probably Sunday. And then obviously I'll record the tournament too. Hopefully we do all right. Just going to go in there positive, dedicated to just being open-minded and trying to be laser focused on paying attention and catching those fish. And we'll see what happens. It's fun. So I miss fishing tournaments. I'm fishing McClure BBT. So I'll be at the BBT tournament Saturday. Speaking of Future Pro Tour, I want to go jump back in the Future Pro Tour. I've got, a little bit of those things. But I miss fishing the Future Pro Tour and Vince and everybody. Good old Vince. Oh, man, that guy's got a mouthpiece. He knows how to work it, too. He's a nice guy. But tournaments this weekend, yeah. So I'm geared up, gung-ho, ready to go. So I'm trying to watch how much information I give out on McClure right now, but I'm open, man. I was talking to dudes at the dock, telling them how to catch fish, and I'm sure one of them's fishing the tournament against me, and he didn't do good at all. But I don't care. I'm like, whatever. Come day of the tournament, everything could change. You never know. All I know is water temps were hitting 58, in certain parts of the lake. There were fish in 1 foot of water, but they were also in that same exact spot where I could catch fish in, like, well, it wasn't one, but it was about 5 feet. They were fishing 5 feet of water. And I turned around and I catch a nice one in 50 feet of water. And I'm just like, the hell, these fish, man, all over the lake. It was like that. The bite was just interesting. Let's just say that the bite, the technique, what was needed to catch them. We'll share that with you guys. But if you've been watching the channel, let's just say it's nothing new. It's what I've been doing. So, I just figured out how to do it at McClure, like where to do it at. And I had to redial myself in, I'm going to take a bite real quick. I'm starving. Uh-oh. Could hear the dogs. Oh, the dam area at New Maloney's. I'm fishing in 50 to 60 feet right there. That's probably why. So if you're over there at the dam area at New Maloney's, you need some of these, brother. That's how we're getting them. We're fishing. We're sitting in about 40. So all the way from the dam down towards Angels Creek into, like, say, the spillway, from the dam to the spillway, we're sitting in 40 feet. And we're casting as far out as we can into like 70. Some places it's only 60 or 50 something. Some places it's 80. And, occasionally you'll get a tree or two down there, but most of the time you get your fish anywhere from 70 to about 50 feet while you're pulling it up the hill. And they're loaded right there. It's weird. The bass are not with the bait fish right now in any of the lakes. It's so weird, but they're coming out fat. So I'm like, how is this? It's like they're going in and feeding at weird times and then coming back in, or they're eating stuff like jigs. They're eating like stuff like crawdads or something else. It's just not easily showing up, or loose bait fish schools, small ones, because at McClure, I'm seeing massive, massive schools of bait fish, all in Piney Creek, but no fish in like certain parts. There's fish in Piney Creek, but there was massive schools of bait fish. And I'm like, where the hell are all the fish with them? Then I went into Horseshoe Bend, right? And over by like the island in the middle, I'm sitting over by Horseshoe Bend, and then 60 to 80, there's just giant clouds of bait fish all over the bottom, like 2 feet off the bottom, and just everywhere down there. And there ain't no bass with them. You can see, like, the graph that I got is pretty nice because they're cloudy. And then when there's bass in them, they'll look like little stars because they'll be real bright. The return signature, the bass will actually show up in the school of bait fish. Nice, Robert Avia. Good job. So what I'll do sometimes is just refish that stretch 2 or 3 times, and that's how you can catch, 10, 15 fish if you've had a real bad day. But usually, so here's what's happening at New Maloney's. So I'm pretty sure, because I went again and the fish weren't there as much. So what's happening is the fish are taking off from that main lake body area, and they're starting to head up into Angels Creek. So instead of heading to the dam and fishing that stretch, because you can catch them there, there's going to be fish there all year long right there. So, but the majority, or a huge portion of them right now, and they're doing the same thing at McClure, same thing at Don Pedro, same thing at New Maloney's. They're sitting on main lake points, main body, right? That's why I was smacking them on the dam, 30, 40 fish a day, 25 fish a day, whatever. And they're pushing up into the creek arms to go head to spawn. So they're not officially pre-spawn yet. Some of them are. I've seen some fish moving around. So there's a few in pre-spawn. The most of them are like gearing for pre-spawn. They're already ready to, they're leaving their winter haunts. They know the weather's warming up. They can feel the light change, the water temp change. And so they're moving to their spawning grounds. And at New Maloney's, one of the best spawning arms on that whole damn lake is Angels Creek. So you can bet you can bet your bottom dollar that a lot of those fish that were sitting on that main lake that I was catching 2 and 3 weeks ago, because that's how long, because those videos have been out for like a week, a couple days to a week or two. And that was from 2, 3 weeks ago, because I can't just get to editing. Sometimes I go on a fishing trip and the video's out 2 days later. Sometimes I go on a fishing trip and the video's out like a week and a half later. So, if the video's been out for a week, it's been 2 weeks already, and the weather was a lot colder. So right now, I would assume those bass are pushing up into Angels Creek. So I would go, if you're launching from Glory Hole or Tuttle, whatever, I would start near the spillway, right? So instead of starting near the dam, I'd head to the spillway and stay and fish that same stretch of shore, heading up into Angels Creek, and you should destroy them. Excuse me. I'm gonna take another bite real quick. I'm still on camera. I think I'm hiding. I'm more like starving. I'm like trying to eat. Yeah, whatever. I will tilt this thing a little bit this way. That way I can take a bite in peace. Let's just put it this way, though. No matter what. What's up, Ray? Whichever one of these mother lode lakes you're fishing, you're going to find fish shallow. But you want to make sure you have one of these. I'm going to do a how-to fizzing video. I'm sure a lot of people know how to fizz already. And if you don't, I'm going to show you. So you want to get yourself, a fizz kit. I like this one that I got. The fizz needle is rubber. So it's not really super solid. So it can be bent. It won't break real easy. And it's pretty sturdy. It comes with a clean out tool. And I'll show you a way to fizz them that doesn't really risk hurting them and doesn't go through the side. I actually go through the mouth. So I think at next, probably during the tournament, I'll make sure to take a few moments to record, and do a short little 2 or 3 minute video on how to fizz a bass real easy, and show you exactly where to go in, and drop a link on where to pick those up, because I've been in a tournament one time, and on a hot moment when I'm trying to get the net for my buddy, I just barely nudged one of these and it broke, because the one that he had, the super high end one, is almost like glass, like plastic, like super brittle, hard plastic. This is kind of like a an empty ballpoint pen. It has flexibility. You can step on it. It's not going to break. So I'm already super excited for these. I've got a gunky old one that ready to retire. So I got these 2 new ones. Make sure, I take good care of my fish. So appreciate you. What's going on, Charles Chalk? And again, hey, Ray, good to see you in the house tonight. And we're going to, like I said, we're going to be having early access come out for you guys for the New Maloney's, the last 2 New Maloney's trips, and the Lake McClure trips. Now, let's just say this. One bit of advice I'd like to give anybody who's listening is that at this particular time of fishing, things can change really fast. So if you see my video come out and I'm all excited talking about catching them in 40 to 60, by the time you watch it, these fish may be in 10 or 20, 30 or 40. So right now, I'm seeing them move. So it was almost like before, if you focused shallow, it was extremely tough to get them. But if you can get them, though, because there's always fish shallow. You just had to cover more water, still had to fish super slow, but you can get them, and they were decent fish. But whenever we went out deep, we started whacking 2s and some nice ones, 3s, every time out deep. And we're catching a lot of them. So we're having a great time. And it seems like the bite's been getting slower and slower out deep. And you can see them under the crunchers and right kind of in between them, right between and under. So you go right under the cruncher. Yep. And you just pop that sucker right in. And then you put the bass. What I do is I do it in the live well. So I pull the bass out, as soon as you catch it, if you're going to do it right away, you just hold the bass by the lip, set that sucker in, pop it right in underneath the cruncher. You'll hear it release right away while you're holding it, and then you can put it and hold it by the lip and hold it underwater, and you can watch the bubbles come out until most of the bubbles stop coming out. Then you can pull it out and make sure he stays. And then before you pull it out, you can kind of even give him a little bit of like slack on your hand and let the bass just go kind of for a second, and see if he stays right side up. But if he thrashes around, you could break one of your fizzers or damage the bass. So I'd probably just make sure you drain most of the air. I've heard when you catch them from super deep and they're really bloated, if you drain too much of the air, that could be a problem for them, because then they'll sink like a stone and they don't have any air in their air bladder, and it'll take too long to, they can't swim back up. I don't know if it's true or not, some kind of drama. But I heard, yeah, on one video you weren't supposed to, like, you need to drain it enough to where they're buoyant and balanced and they don't roll over. But you don't want to drain every last drop of air out of their air bladder. So again, I'm not a pro, but we'll do a video on it just so you guys see it done if you haven't seen it done. Some of you guys probably have done it more than me and probably know a little bit more, but hey, we're going to at least do a video and, let people see that this is how I do it. And there you go. You never know. Plus, it's for internet land. We don't know how many people out there, might be interested in something like that and haven't seen it done before. Fishing is kind of really niche, which is why I have my other channel, Common Sense Talks, where I get to blab about all kinds of BS. So if you guys want to go follow me over there, you can. Only got like 50 subscribers or something like that. So, but I go drop in every once in a while. Once that channel gets, a little bigger, then I'll spend a lot more time on it. And you guys can see, or if you're interested in that, because I like to keep fishing related. Don't like to drive down, too many rabbit holes, so to speak, when I'm talking about fishing. But if you're interested and you're thick skinned, then my channel Common Sense Talks might be up your alley as well. So yeah, don't press them when releasing the air. You're not supposed to squeeze them. Like I was saying, you don't want to let too much of the air out. So um, I've had a fish fizzer, but it's kind of gunked up and messed up, and I didn't really have the cleaning tool for it. And my boat's been in the shop, so I really only started fizzing them this year, because before, um, when we were tournament fishing, most of it was done when we didn't need to fizz our fish, or if we did, we just had a floater or two that was still alive, and someone would fizz it at the dock for us or something. So, but there's no excuse, man. Fish as much as I do, you got to really make sure you have a couple on board, just like a couple scales now. After my fiasco with catching some monster bass, not having a scale on board and flipping out trying to find a scale and get one. Oh man. So, got to make sure I have at least two scales on board. I have two fizzers and, of course, life vests, all that good stuff. But, just and I always have my GoPros. I have two GoPros and my camera fully charged. And the other thing I think I have it out here. It's in the house. I have a solar charger so that my phone can, if it dies, I can charge it again. That way I can do live streams and, do all kinds of cool stuff. I don't have a inverter on my boat or nothing set up, not that fancy. So that would be nice. But one day, we'll put one of those little things in and maybe a little outlet or something to charge, a USB port or something. But, that's what it is. So anyways, back to fishing, my bad. Winter to spring transition, these fish should be heading towards spawning flats. So just simply, old rule I was always taught is the northernmost creek arm and the northernmost flats with hard bottom will turn on first. I don't know if that's true or not, but for McClure, that would be like Horseshoe Bend. That would be Piney and Barrett's area. McClure Point even. And that would mean Cotton and Temperance and Bagby would be last, right? So I don't know if that's true, but I've always kind of stuck with that reasoning, and usually I head to the northernmost creek arm. So like For Pedro, that would be woods, I believe, or big or woods, because even though woods is more towards, the Sierra Nevadas, if you look the way Pedro's set up, it's actually going this way. And I think Big Creek is longitudinally more north than Woods. So I think Big Creek, this is why 49er Bay is a hot place for guys to go, spawn fishing in Pedro. Uh, Blue Oaks, believe it or not, is a great spawning ground. Mexican Gulch right there, right around the corner from Blue Oaks. So there's a lot of great little areas down there on the main body. But yeah, that's just kind of how I approach it. So, anyways, these bass right now, you're going to find some of them are still on the main lake points, main body. Some of them are heading towards those. So you can still catch on the main body. You can be out like that shoreline at New Maloney's and still pick off fish because those are like highways. But the congregate, the general population of bass in the lakes are basically grouping up and headed to the spawning areas right now, and they move real slow, right? Not real slow, but they're not just from the point to the flat in one, boom, like that. I mean, maybe some of them do, but they kind of, they're in their winter phase and they kind of awaken from their slumber and they start, feeding and doing their thing and moving. And they start as the weather and the light conditions, just like, they can tell, even if the weather is crazy or whatever, they know when the sun goes up and they know when the sun goes down. So when the light starts changing and getting longer, these fish know there's like hibernation, like waking up, like shit, time to do our thing. So they start heading towards these creeks. Appreciate it, Pantera Classic. I love Pantera and Slayer, all that good stuff. Used to actually rock a mohawk back in the day, so like rock and roll. And then if your name isn't related to Pantera, my bad. Appreciate it. So nice, Gilroy. Yep, but yeah, it should be, the bass fishing should be okay. So right now I'm going to give some hints. So I don't want to give away too much because I am fishing a tournament this weekend. But the fish are still slow mo, Joe. They're still just kind of, groggily waking up and they're moving, right? So you can find them on main lake points, but they're predominantly heading towards their spawning grounds. You may find them, they're not at their spawning grounds yet, so don't bother with that. But fish the nearest deep water to the spawning ground. And the other thing is structure. I don't care if it's deep. I don't care what it is. It needs to have some rocks, some trees, some limbs, some hard bottom, and it needs to be some deep water near those spawning flats, right? And then again, I'm always told north end of the lake. So hence like you know, the areas I named. Angels Creek for New Maloney's is the northernmost creek arm. Look it up if you don't believe me on GPS. Angels Creek is the northernmost creek arm for New Maloney's. Piney, well, technically Horseshoe Bend is, then Piney for McClure, and Big Creek and Woods for Don Pedro. And then usually like Rogers and Hatch will turn on right after those. So, but depth plays a factor too. Rogers is real shallow, so sometimes Rogers is turning on before or the same time Woods is. So it's fascinating how fishing works, right? Was finishing up the honey to do list. Yo, what's up, Mario? We're just chilling, talking fishing. So, in a nutshell, I was talking about solar maxim. So, what the solar maxim is our sun goes through a solar cycle, right? Every not every so many years, but it goes through different cycles, and we're in one of its greatest cycles right now, where it's at its brightest, most violent points, and they usually last, and we've seen these and tracked these, and then like through like science, they know, back so many years that this cycle lasts about 11 years when it happens, when it hits its maximum. And so what that means is more UV rays, more heat, more sun, right? So this is going to affect fishing, I think, by pushing the early spawn and creating probably warmer temperatures here. So I'm not trying to tie it in with anything else. It's just factually we're in a solar maximum. So I just got to check this out. Some Science Channel stuff was talking about this, and I'm like, I know that's got to be affecting fishing for sure, because not only are we in a solar maximum, but we normally have El Nino, La Nina, right? And El Nino is wet and cold, and La Nina is dry and mild winters, right? And so we're in a La Nina, so a dry, mild winter, and expound upon that, we're also in a solar maximum. So I think we're going to see an early spawn. Full moon is coming in 2 weeks. Water temps at McClure in the most northern arms were like 58. So up by Horseshoe Bend, it was like 56 to 58. It was crazy. Some of the bass were in 5 feet of water. Some of them were in 40, 50. So I know that this is activating them and turning them on sooner. Now, here's the problem, though. So a little hint or tip, I guess I would say, is the fishing is still slow. Any moment, what it should do is the males should move up to start clearing off beds, to start killing and pushing anything out of the zone of where they're going to spawn, but they have to get there first, right? So they're moving towards their spawning grounds, and then as they're doing so, it's warming up. The days are getting longer. These fish are activating. They're going to start going into pre-spawn. So they're not going to do this all just in one day and at one setting. But somewhere along the lines, what's going to happen is even the males, but especially the females, are going to have to eat a little bit more before the spawn game really starts, because they're not really trying to eat when they actually spawn. That's why hence it's called pre-spawn. So even though they've been fattening all winter, they've been probably eating all year, they're really going to look for some bigger meals, or they're also going to eat more if there's not bigger stuff there to eat, right? This is when you'll start noticing big cruisers on your graph. You'll notice streaks shoot by here and there, and pay attention to what depth they're in. And if you notice that, if you're sitting still and there's a streak comes across your screen randomly, those are big fish or just semi. No, those are the females that are looking for food and they're starting to cruise. That's when you can actually start using. And the fishing will seem counterintuitive, because most of the fish you'll catch will probably be things like drop shot, Ned rig, finesse stuff. You'll be catching a lot of the males and some of them smaller 2 and 3 pound females, right? But the really big 4+ pound fish, they're those ones that you see on your graph cruising, right? Those are the ones that are hunting. And when that happens, spinner baits, crank baits, and early morning top water and stuff like that should just light up. And the bite should get really good. We'll even usually get a little rain. So it'll be warm rain. That'll usually come in March, right? So second wave of spawn or so. But I expect the first wave usually contains some of the biggest fish. And I believe in my heart that that's probably going to be sometime around late February this year, unless the weather totally flips and pushes them off, which can happen. They can get all ready. They can start heading to there. They can be sitting in deeper water right next to their spawning grounds, just waiting. And all the water temps right, the lights right, everything's turning on, full moon's happening, and they're getting ready. And then we have a cold system move in, and it just gets freezing cold, pushes those bass back off. That happens a lot of the time too, but I doubt it this year with the La Nina and a solar maximum. We're probably going to be in some warm weather for the rest of the year, or most of the year. And with that being said, it's supposed to be 80 this Saturday. So, yep, I'm ready for the BBT. Are you ready, Mark? We're going to go out there and try to get them. Did you ever figure out a spawn pattern at Yosemite? I'm sure they spawn a lot sooner there, since it's usually always colder. For me, whenever the water's colder, they spawn later. I don't usually find them spawning earlier. Sometimes, for example, in the river, like Merced River, yeah, I have actually seen them spawning in February in some of the colder waters, especially when it's got movement and running. But normally, like for example, the Delta for me, they spawn a little bit later. So they'll spawn March and April, and they'll even go into May and June sometimes. Some of the super late spawners, you'll find some random bass on bed in May and June. Early June would probably be stretching it, but we have, like, me and my buddy caught a seven. Well, he caught it in a tournament, so I say me and my buddy, but it was him. He spotted it. We went, and he goes, "It's on a bed." I go, "No way!" And sure enough, we pull up, and the bass would not leave. It would circle and then sit, and it was sitting on a cleared out space. And he goes, "Yeah, it's on a bed. Like maybe the mate got caught, something happened. Maybe it just didn't find a mate coming on late. Who knows what happened?" But a big old 7 pounder sitting on a bed in early June. So, and I've caught them in May still, but mostly I think April is when they really start turning on at the Delta. While in Don Pedro McClure, the bite can be all brutal, crazy. Next thing you know, it's the end of February, beginning of March, and all of a sudden there's all these bass all the way up on shore. And if you were the early bird that got that worm in the late February, man, it's fun. But most of the time, it'll be those small males that move up, but the big females usually come in that first wave. And crankbaits, we got a when we went to go fish Don Pedro, my buddy got a 9 pounder on a wiggle wart. We got that on video, and he got a 9 pounder crankbait, and the rest of the day we had to use like drop shots and egg rigs to catch our fish. But those big mamas were already fat and getting ready, so any minute now. That's why I try to also let you guys know that sometimes, so some of my videos, they're just going to come out like in the next couple days, and I always give them to members first, right, for early access. So they won't hit the public till probably like a week. And by the time my videos come out, be warned, I'm catching fish in 40 to 60 feet. And I fully expect by the time my videos to come out, those fish to be moved tremendously. So the more for entertainment purposes, these live streams is where I try to give out my actual day-to-day fishing knowledge, like fishing report, like where are the fish at, how is it going, what's going on. And also chances for us to chat, talk. Anybody have questions about knots, about colors, about weights, lure weights, all that stuff. Is that something I've really gotten good at perfecting, is when to use what size weight on what size line for what conditions and where, because it's just been super frustrating being a guy that's usually always fished with poor gear. I finally have some upgraded stuff, but I'm proud to say that my last 3 videos, actually 4 videos, with all those bass have all been caught on a Walmart combo that costs less than $40. So I bought a Zebco Rhino Indestructible for 19. No, it was like 14 or 15.99. Then I bought like a 19.99 Fluger reel and put some 8-pound test on it. And away I go with this rubbery trout rod. It's been fun, and it's actually been working very good. Not a lot of fish lost on it. While my Dobbins Fury is more for like shaky head and stuff like that. The one that I have is a 703 Fury. It's not for a drop shot, and I tend to forget and use it for drop shot. And when the bite's real light, I end up, when I set the hook, the damn pole's too stiff and it pulls the hook out every time. If I don't lift slowly and then reel slowly and dig the hook in, the damn rod has so much backbone, even though it's a finesse freaking spinning rod, it pulls the damn hook out. So I've gotten good with learning what to use where. So if you guys have any questions, I try to help, do the best that I can. But anyways, I don't know if you guys were aware, we're in a solar maxim. So I think, if you don't, it's really important to wear face gear, hand gear. Look at me, I'm super red. I go out there, I get burnt. So don't want to get skin cancer. So we got to take care of ourselves. There's going to be a lot of UV rays the next 5 to 7 years because we're in a solar max and lasts for 11. And I think we're like 2 years in or something. So the peak is going to be 2025, which means it should probably be over 2028, 2029. So I mean, you should always wear that gear anyways, but just I think it's interesting that the Earth's being bombarded with way more UV rays than normal, and we've lost 45 satellites I hear in like the last 2 years because of this. So solar flares are taking crazy stuff out. So they're saying in the next 3 to 5 years, we could start having semi big problems with our cell phone networks and other stuff. It's not going to be the end of the world or anything, but it's just we're in a very active cycle of the sun that we haven't been through during one of our most recent technological ages, right? Last time we had a solar maximum was quite a while ago. Not super long time ago, but long enough where we didn't have cell phones and ultra computers. So, I think that's kind of fascinating. Again, understanding El Nino, La Nina. I think when you plan your fishing year, if it's an El Nino year, you're going to have cloud cover, rain. It's going to be cold and extended winter kind of, but then you're going to have some really nice. The lake's going to be full. You're going to have a lot of water coming in. Usually, reaction bites really hot. You get rain all the way late in the year. Spawn might be a little postponed, but those are, are a little bit behind what you're used to. Those are some of the funnest years, though. The lake gets ultra full. Summer gets good. The fish just push shallow. Exploring all that new water and stuff that comes in off of when the water raises up and bugs and things that come out. Just, fish, when the lake level rises, fish push up and push shallow. When the lake drops, they pull out. So that's another thing to kind of remember. Good rule of thumb. And right now the lake's rising, but it's rising very slow, and then even kind of like not dropping, but steady state. It's like taking in as much water as it's pushing out. So these fish aren't drastically changing yet, but they are moving. They are heading towards their spawning areas. So don't winter fish. Don't go sit out on main lake points. That would be my advice. You can probably stroke them like that still, but I would be looking from, like, if I was saying, where would I be during the winter? You're looking at all these long main lake points and these other little areas where you think they would all be hunched up or bunched up in these little cuts and coves on the main body, right? All these big rocks and stuff, holding whatever. Well, and then you see like a spawning flat, a mile or a quarter mile down the way. Well, somewhere between there and there, that's where those fish are going to be. They're going to be moving. So they are moving. They're active. But because a couple weeks ago, they were all plastered to the bottom. Right now, you can actually see a few of them lifted up and moving around, but there's still a bunch of them on the bottom. So it's tough, but I think that I would predict, me personally, that one more week of this temperature, and we're going to have some freak early spawners, and we're also going to have pre-spawn will be not full swing but turning on. And I expect full pre-spawn to be for most of the fish within 2 weeks, where almost the entire lake should be up and moving around and doing their thing, as long as the weather holds, which means that your first big waves of spawning may come in late February, looking at like the 24th, 26th or something like that, when that full moon, turns on. And if the water temps are 60-ish, and you get your full moon and the light is at the right amount of hours, we should see our first wave. If not, then you're looking at sometime in March. Obviously, it's going to be lit up. So anytime, I don't obviously March is when it usually lights up, but I think early bird gets the worm. So when you're out there, don't be afraid to get up shallowish, take a crankbait, take a spinner bait, especially if there's a little wind, and chop on the water and cover that shoreline, a slow roll, a spinner bait down in maybe 5 to 10, 15 feet of water, and do the same thing with a square bill up shallow and in between 2 and 6, 7 feet of water, and maybe a medium diving crankbait in 8 to 15 feet. And the bite, when that bite happens, that's how you'll win checks if you're tournament fishing, and that's how you're going to have a great time. And the early bird will get the worm. So there'll be a ton of fish that are still on the bottom. That'll be lazy. People will be, oh, I caught 12 pounds with my drop shot. Oh, I did great. I caught 30 fish. Yeah, great. But some of the monsters, those people with the 16, 15-pound bags, they're going to be doing it with jigs, Nico rigs, big old Cincos. They're going to be doing it with crankbaits, spinner baits, and then top water. the early bird gets the worm. I haven't been on it this year yet. I really need to just slap myself and do it because I've seen some fish busting and I know they're bass. They're not trout right now. I know where the trout are out and these fish are too shallow and it's like they're chasing stuff, feeding, and then they'll go away. If you get too close or you like throw stuff at them, I've caught a fish or two doing that, but they're not quite ready for the crankbait or the spinnerbait yet. Let's just say that. And I fully expect in the next week, any moment now, someone's going to be like posting pictures on Facebook or videos. If you're in California, watch the spinnerbait is going to, I think, be the number one first. Spinnerbait or crankbait. Spinnerbait because you can control the depth. So you can take a spinnerbait, you can pull up shallow, you can throw it in 3 feet of water and run that spinnerbait right along the rocks. Then if you're not getting bit, pull out, throw it in 8 feet of water and roll it right above the rocks. I get bit, pull out over 15 feet, let it sink like a jig. As soon as it hits the bottom, slow roll it right over the rocks. And sure enough, when that pre-spawn bite happens, that's how you're going to get some fatties. And I'm looking forward to doing it and hopefully proving it. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But usually that's how I did it. When I won well, I didn't win, but we got a trophy. We didn't win first place or nothing. At New Maloney's, we that's what we were doing was cranking, using the chartreuse crankbait and the chartreuse spinnerbait. And that's how I got a 6-pound spotted bass in February on a double whopper plopper. But it wasn't during the tournament. It was pre-fishing for it. Because if I would have knocked that sucker during the tournament, it would have been it would have been on. So, all right, let's read some comments. Oh, what's up, Sam? I'm going to hit Maloney's tomorrow after all your great tips and tricks. Well, I appreciate it, Mad Bass. I think I responded to your message. If not, I'll respond to it. But verbally, we'll tell you that New Maloney's, they're still going to probably be fishing that 40 to 60 range. So be aware of that. And they're probably going to want the drag. They're going to want you to move your lure real slow. But you probably can find some fish in the 15 to, maybe 10 to 15 foot, 20-foot range. And it's going to be the same thing. You're probably going to want to throw something like a drop shot, a Ned rig, shaky head, or a finesse jig or something, not too full sized, and just basically drag it. Or a Nico rig works great, but just drag it and don't hop it and pop it and move it. And whenever your weight changes, just set the hook. And 9 out of 10 times, it's going to be a fish. And out of the other, it's going to be split between either a rock and it's going to pop out or snag, or a tree. So, but most of the time that's a fish and that's all you're feeling. Now the bite should be shifting and changing soon. Eventually you'll probably feel your bites and they'll hit it a little more forcefully. You can pop your lure and wiggle it and move it. Again, right around that time, the spinnerbait, crankbait, top water, stuff like that should start turning on. Maybe even a jerk bait, like a spring jerk bait bite. But in the meantime, I don't think it's there yet. I tried. So I took a crankbait today and I spent about an hour, covering a lot of different water with it. And then I took a spinnerbait and I spent about 45 minutes doing the same thing. And it felt really good. Felt freaking great. But just didn't get anything with it. And I smacked my fish doing what I usually do. So, but like I said, when that bite flips, man, you want to be the first one on it. And if I was going to New Maloney's, I would probably be starting. If I was going there right now, instead of starting at the dam, I'd probably start at that big long point halfway between the dam and the spillway, to work my way down to the spillway and see how fishing went. If it didn't do too good, I'm going to just go off around that next little point and then head to that big long stretch of shore that heads into Angels Creek and then fish that the whole way. And if by 10, 11 o'clock you don't have 4 or 5 decent fish, then you need to probably pick it up and head further into Angels, or inside of the dam is a decent spot. We'll just tell you, I don't think I'm going to get to go to Maloney's for another couple weeks. But where I saw like an 8-pound spotted bass in the dam in the corner over by the switchbacks, about 60 feet out, suspended. So there's a freaking monster sitting in that damn area in the corner right there. Somebody needs to go take a weightless Cinco or an S waver or something to it and go catch that damn thing. I wanted to, maybe top water even. I don't know, but I know that it was definitely in pre-spawn already and looked aggressive, but when it seen us, it got spooked and took off. And I'm pretty sure our casting caught its attention. The noise. I'm gonna come over here and take a bite. Mm. So, with that being said, whew, that's the winter transition, the El Nino, La Nina, and the whatchamacallit, the solar maximum. So I just wanted to cover that. Where they're going, you know, like I said, they're headed towards their spawning grounds. So look for their spawning grounds and don't fish there. Look near there. Find the deep water near there and fish slow. Pay attention to your graphs and look for those cruisers. When you start seeing those cruisers, that's when you need to start paying attention to what water column they're in, how deep they're in, and you need to be able to, right now, if you can, graph shallow too. So graph in 10 or 15 feet, 20 feet of water, 25 feet of water, and see what you can find. Once you get shallower than 10, you can't really graph it. It's not really, viable. But if you see them in 10 or 15, and they're cruising, or if you're sitting over 25 and you see those cruisers, pay attention how deep they are, and then select your lure. Do you want to use a crank? Do you want to use a spinner bait? Are they in the top water? Are they then maybe a jerk bait? Are they middle or towards the bottom? Then you might want a deep dive or medium dive and crankbait, maybe a spinner bait, slow roll. A Colorado blade or double Colorado or double Indiana is my favorite in dirty water. So when there's a lot of water incoming into the lakes right now, I would recommend a Colorado blade or double Colorado, or it's not quite that dirty. So in Indiana is my favorite for these mountain lakes. But if I'm fishing the Delta, I'm using a Colorado blade. If I'm fishing these motherlode lakes, when they're dirty-ish, then I'm using a double or a single Indiana. And if I'm fishing them during the summer or wherever and it's clear water, I'm usually using a willow blade. And if I'm fishing at night, I'm almost always using a Colorado blade, whatever has the most thump. So just, try to figure out what you're comfortable with. So if you're an S waver, a big swim bait thrower, it's going to be your time to catch those big pre-spawn mamas. Just pay attention when you see them start to actually get active and moving, because don't be a sucker for these 1 to 2.5 pound males and the 1 to 2.5 pound, 3 pound, depending on the lake. 3 pounds can be good, right? But the little females, if you're a big fish, you're out to catch the big girls, or you've got your 4 or 5 in a tournament and you need that kicker, you need to pay attention to your graph. And when you see this fish that are suspended, that's when you need to start throwing the crankbait, the spinner bait. Just pay attention to what depth they're in. Another thing is if you understand, for example, if you're not moving, right, and you're just stationary with like spot lock, if a fish comes underneath your boat real slow and lethargic like, it'll have a certain look, a big long streak on your fish finder. If it just shows up like a blip and then it's gone, that fish was moving pretty fast and it just got caught and then boom, it's gone. So it'll have a shorter streak. So if they're moving kind of quickly, I would probably use a crankbait, a deep diver or medium diving crank. If they're moving kind of slow, I'll probably use a slow roll and spinner bait. Those are probably how I would look at it. But especially new Maloney's right now, not right now, but soon, that pre-spawn bite will turn on, and a spinner bait through the trees and laydowns and wood next to all the big boulders, or get up alongside a rocky shoreline and crankbait. That's going to pull you so many fish out of Angels Creek when they go up in there to spawn. That's how I whacked them. And usually too, long story short, is even during the spawn, it's just an and pre-spawn. It's either low light conditions or the first 3 hours of the day that you could do that. Sometimes you could do it all day, but what would happen is I'd go in there and we would throw crankbaits. So you might have a spot where you're sitting in 20 feet or 15 feet of water and you got like two trees. There's an opening between them and the bank. Take your crankbait or your spinnerbait and cast it in between those two trees and reel it near them if you can, right? Out to you, and you just get crushed, right? Slow roll a spinnerbait or do a crankbait, but we'd be able to do that and pull 2, 3, 4, 5 pounders out left and right. And we're having a great time. But as soon as the sun got really high, those bass either locked onto their beds if they were there, or like went to the duty of making the or doing the beds or doing whatever they're doing, or they locked onto structure and they just sat there. And then we had to use things like drop shots and things, but then we killed them, caught a ton of fish, had a ton of fun. Did the same thing. If you look at my channel, I've got 390 videos, I believe. And I fished Lake McClure all this time of year 2 years ago when it was a kind of wet year, and it was epic. I've got video after video of me crushing it at McClure with 15-pound and 13-pound bags. Like, you'd be surprised to have had a great time. So I don't know if this spawn is going to be similar or as good, being that we're in a drought year and all this and that. But it just, it depends on the incoming water and how clear the water is. See, what sucks is when you get a spawn and the water is kind of settled, like it's came in and it's kind of a later spawn, and the water's melted. It's cold. It was cold all winter. Then the spring comes in kind of late, and the snow melts, and it all is cold, and the lake stays, and then it turns on to spawn, and then the water level is kind of neutral. It's not raising and lowering too much. Then the water tends to be super clear, in which you can see those beds perfectly. But sometimes during the spawn and this time of year in spring, depending on weather and stuff, you can get days where you'll get a system come in, dump a bunch of rain in, and the lake will turn muddy brown, and just screw your visibility up, and you can't see squat. So I've seen this lake fish so many different ways: McClure, Pedro, all New Maloney's, and I was crushing it in one of those little kind of dirtier water years, but the lake was super low and it was starting to raise, but there were trees everywhere. It was New Maloney's when it was at its lowest, and we were just crankbaiting and spinnerbaiting through all the trees and brush. But we've killed it there a couple of different ways. But again, McClure will kick out spinnerbait and crankbait fish. McClure is one of those lakes. It's a tough cookie to crack, and it basically is like a bottom bouncer finesse lake, like almost all year long. But it's not. That's what people think of it. If you fish it the right way, about half the year, that lake's a great power lake where you can run around and jig fish and crankbait, spinnerbait, and topwater like all damn day, especially at night too. So that lake has some great moments, but right now it's not one of them. It's more of a slow fish for sure. Oh yeah, I know exactly where you're talking about, Frank and Beans. The lake, the Glory Hole, basically Glory Hole right now you're launching on, I think, the left hand side or kind of in the middle. Well, when the lake gets lower, you'll have to launch on the right hand side. There's a ramp on the right hand side, and then the trees will start getting exposed. And there's a couple islands straight across from Glory Hole if you're looking kind of westward, not towards the upriver, but the opposite way. There'll be there's this beautiful rocky mountain that comes straight out like this, and then it's almost like a big boob, right? It comes up big, like 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 a mound, and then kind of levels out like a sloping, and then it has big gray boulder like a big nipple, right in the middle of this big mound, big gray boulders and rocks, and it's got 4 tall trees. It looks like a freaking temple, right? That line it, one on each corner of the island. So it's an island that kind of slopes out and then drops off super deep. And then in the middle is a giant rock, and it's got on each corner 4 big old giant trees. But the trees have had most of the branches broken and they're kind of small. So, but they'll hold fish. That island, man, when it gets like right from being when the trees start sticking up, that island's money because they'll stop there on their way into Angels Creek. And what you're talking about is okay. So you normally, when the lake gets lower, you'll launch on the right. If the lake gets even lower than that, you launch in the middle again, and it becomes a dirt launch. And if you look at, it's a really cool. Glory Hole Point goes out for like a mile, right? It goes forever and a day out into the lake. So, like you said, there'll be this area that's like super far away from launch and it's only 40, 50 feet deep. And there'll be fish there almost all year, too. The hell, depending on how the lake level is, you might find them spawning out there. It's a nice little flat. Like you said, there's a parking lot out there. There's another one. Oh, hear anything about Eastman? Oh, I'm going to take a bite again. All right, let's look it up. I haven't heard from anybody, but let's see. Someone's here. I'm looking really quick to see if I can check for you. I can't wait to fish Eastman again once it's it says all day use facilities, campgrounds, and the project office are open to the public right now. Camping reservations can be made now through recreation.gov. Um, lake levels, let's see right here. Lake levels for Eastman. Notice web server what? Lake levels for Eastman. At start of day, it's 10% full. Holy shit. It doesn't say that you can't drop a boat in there. I think you can still fish in there. It's just a pond. It's extremely dangerous when it's that low because I know that I've been there when it's that low, and not all of the stuff is marked once it gets that low. So like I hit ground one time in my old boat going real slow, and good thing it was just like mud soft, and we just went and stopped, and I was like, oh, lifted up the motor and trolling motorist out, and I was like, oh my god. So that lake's epic, and I've been there. I don't know if you guys heard the story, but I was there when my buddy caught like 34 pounds or more for his best 5, but he managed to catch like 7 or 8. And me and his brother were there with him, and we both got skunked. He caught nearly on his first, almost his first cast. He gets there, he pulls out a 12 pounder. Then after the 12 pounder, he pulls out a almost 10 pounder, a 9 plus. Then he pulls out like a 7 or an 8. I think it was an 8, then a 7, then like a 6, and then a 5, then like another 5 or a 6. I'm just like, what the is going on? And this is all throughout the course of maybe 5 hours, 6 hours. And then the bite just died. He caught like every fucking big fish there. And me and his brother were frustrated. We couldn't get a bite. And looking back, hindsight, I know exactly what it was. It was pre-spawn. We were using U heads, quarter ounce swing head, U heads with Cincos. And We were bombing it into like 20 feet of water, maybe 25 feet, and all around us it was maybe 5 feet. And it was this big cut where it was coming in. And the way he caught all this fish, he was drunk out of his mind. He had like a freaking 30 pack to his head down there. Dude was barely standing up drunk, right? And he caught all that drunk out his gourd and super sloshed. And I know all he did was dead stick. He just cast out and just sat there all drunk. And then if he had any movement to his bait, it was probably like him, like leaning back, like, and then maybe one turn of the reel, and then sat there again, fish, and we're just like, what? And we're casting after he had like the 12, and then like the 9 change, almost a 10. We're like, all right, buddy, let us get one. So we're casting in there, and we're casting like on top of his lure, and he's still stroking 7 and 8 pound bass, and then he's still stroking 5 and 6s, and he gets like a total of like, I don't know, I want to say like 8 bass, and we don't catch a single one. And they were all monsters, not a single small bass. He got all the big mamas, and we released them all, obviously, but the big ones wouldn't bite again. They were just in there to feed. And the way he got them, man, dead stick, just sat there with his pole, drunk out his mind. To this day, I was like, man, that bastard dead stick. Yeah, he didn't super slow fished it. He like paused time. He was just like, and the fish came and was like, does that smell like a Cinco? That's a Cinco. Let me eat that shit. Like that bait was just chilling. It wasn't moving. Fish was most like, you probably could have caught that fish on some damn chicken liver. That's basically, he was bait fishing. Like, oh my God. Like, that put the fear of God as far as for like the dead stick. I respected the dead stick ever since then. I heard my friends talking about dead stick fishing before, right? And this was like 10, 15 years ago. My buddy would be like, yeah, I go to the Delta and I go at night and I go to Ben Holt and I go and I chill and I get real low like a ninja, and I just cast my Cinco out and I just let it sit there for like 10 minutes. And he goes, sure enough, almost every cast with it, sometimes within 5 to 10 seconds, sometimes 30, sometimes a minute or two, sometimes within 4, but always within like 5-10 minutes. Dunk. And then he would catch 7-8 pound bass like that. Kid you not. And I was like, no way. Like, I'm figuring that he's like dead sticking to him is like a slow drag, because this guy doesn't really work with lure slow very much. And I'm like, he's always been a power fisherman. I'm like, what do you mean? And sure enough, I watched my buddy Mike catch like 34 to 36 pounds. I don't remember what it was, but just craziest day ever. I watched it with my own 2 eyes, dead stick and drunk out his gourd. And then when I got my Kelsey Bass membership, there was almost a month out of the year where you could throw everything at these bass. You could drag your lure, you could throw a drop shot, you could do a float and fly, you could do everything. These bass weren't having shit. But if you threw that bait out there and you just set your pole down, always within half a minute to a minute, you got crushed, you got bit. The bass would pick it up. Like, these fools are straight, like, what do you call it? Like not waste eaters like carp, but like if it's freshly dead, like they'll eat something, you know what I mean? Ain't even moving. Like, what the hell? So, it's crazy how the bass can smell or see just like a Cinco laying in the muck, just sitting there, and it's not even moving, and eat it and decide, I'm going to eat that. Like, I don't get it. It's nuts how the bass don't just walk around, like swim around eating sticks and shit. I'm sure it's the salts and the smell, maybe the splash of the lure, and the bass sees it, studies it, looks at it, and then decides to eat it. I don't know. But dead sticking has always kind of blown my mind. Like, what the hell? And that's almost how the bite is right now. So you got to be real slow with it. So, and it's this time of year that he did that to us, where we were over here popping and wiggling. Come on, big bass. Come on, big bass. Come on, eat my shit, please. I want a 10-pounder. Boom, got one. It's like, no, I'm ripping out my hair. Like, what the hell? No. But so excited to watch the action. I landed his 12-pounder because he tried to like drag it onto shore. He didn't realize how big it was. He was all drunk. He's all bent. This thing's just going nuts like Jaws on the shore, and he's just all like walking backwards. And I'm like, oh, I ran in and slid and just snatched the bass up. I was like, oh. We put it up. We had a scale that day. We weighed every fish. We even had pictures too, but I think we got them all on his phone, and his dumbass lost it. He's all drunk, and over the years he lost his phone, didn't have it saved or backed up or anything. So I don't think those pictures made it anywhere. Maybe in Facebook, like from many years ago. I'm not sure. I'd have to go check. But craziness. Yeah, I'm telling you, dead sticking is crazy. It works, man. That's believe it or not, we've been catching fish at New Maloney's doing that. So one place we were doing it was we went to the dam at New Maloney's, and we would cast our stuff into about 50, 60 feet of water, and we would just let the lures sit, and we would chat and bullshit, and then go to pick your pole up and you had a fish on. Happened actually 5 or 6 times. I've got it on video, but that's actually going to come out here in a couple of days. You'll see us dead sticking fish at New Maloney's. Actually, funny thing, I was talking about that. But some of my more memorable moments are obviously watching my buddy pull out like a 12-pounder dead sticking, and then let's just call it a 12 and then a 10. Basically, it was like 9 pounds and like 14 ounces. You know, and the 12-pounder wasn't even 12. It was 11 pounds and like 15 ounces. And I'm like, no way, the scale's off. Let's give him his 1 ounce. So that's a 12 and give him his 2 ounces. And that's a 10 basically. But yeah, seriously, just the craziest shit. And then 7s and 8s, like a couple of them. I think he had like 1 8 and 2 7s, or maybe 2 8s and 1 7. And then some 6s and some 5s mixed in. I don't remember exactly how many of what, but I know he had an A5, A6, A7. He had A8. He had a 9, and he had an 11 some change. Literally, there were almost 12 pounds. The 9 was almost 10. It was just so freaking insane to see it happen. And then at the time, I knew he was like, I thought he was fishing slow. Like he's got to be fishing slow, and no, he was just dead sticking. And true story, later on in the day, we're fishing and the bite stops and there's no more like bites. Nobody's catching any fish. And I look over at my buddy, right? And he's just sitting there fishing. And I watch him actually, like he'd been dead sticking for a minute. And I watch him jig his pole up a couple times. And then almost like chill it. And then 20, 30 seconds go by and I watch him pop his pole up. Figure maybe that's how he had been working it most of the day. I look and all his line's gone. There's not even any line on his pole and his reel, and he's just sitting there like this. And he's fishing with a blank rod. I swear to God. The rod and the reel in his hand, no line on it, no lure. I don't know what happened. I assume he had a fish when we weren't paying attention. They just stripped him. Or he maybe cast it off, or he cast out, left his bell open, and a fish got him. I have no idea, but I wasn't paying attention to them for about an hour after the giant fish started biting, and I'm running. I know those fish, we just released them, so they're in there somewhere, and I'm just like, please bite twice, and I'm casting and trying. And then next thing you know, we're hanging out, and I look over, and this fool's sitting there with a pole with no line on it. Anyways, smash that like button. I appreciate everybody hanging out and watching tonight. Thank you for being part of Common Sense Fishing. Don't forget, we're going to be having a February giveaway. That will be coming after the tournaments here. I've got a lot of stuff going on, so it's probably going to be late February. And, it'll be, before the end of the month, but it'll probably be, after my next set of tournaments, because I have a tournament on the 12th, and I believe I have a tournament on the 19th. So it'll probably be sometime after the 19th. We'll have a giveaway for everybody. So share the videos, let people know. Great channel to come check out, hang out with, get some tips and tricks. I share, what's going on, where I'm doing what. So Also, I just try to be entertaining and fun. I read everybody's comments. I'm engaging. The community here is pretty cool. So if you're looking for a nice, cool place to spend an hour or two, you found it. So smash that subscribe and like. But I'm gonna let you guys go. I'll try to be back on tomorrow. And wish me luck in the BBT tournament that I got this Saturday. And then I'm going to hopefully be fishing the 1790 tournament out at Salt Springs. So little shout out there. We're going to be heading out there to pre-fish Wednesday to try to dial them in, and then we will be showing up Saturday to see how it goes. So we've got two tournaments back to back each Saturday. So again, wish me luck. Hopefully, we'll do good. But you guys will get to see those videos. Win, lose, or draw. I could bomb, come in last. I could win first place. It doesn't matter. We're going to show you guys. Usually, when I go out and I don't put a limit together and I only catch 2, 3, 4 fish, I actually don't put those videos out. I've got a couple of videos where we catch like 3 or 4 fish, and I didn't release those. And I've got like probably 3 of those. I should, because not every fishing trip is going to be golden. You're going to struggle. But I usually, don't usually do that bad. I usually catch at least, 10 or more fish when I go fishing. I'm just used to that by now. It doesn't even matter how tough it is. I usually catch at least like 8 to 10. That's a bad trip. I consider decent like 15 to 25. I consider a good trip when you're doing 30 to 50. And I've had 100 fish days. There's very few, but I've had them. So, and then obviously the best is when you get a double digit, big old monster fish. Those are the best. So hopefully we'll smack some of those. But wish the channel luck again. I appreciate everybody's prayers for the situation. We're just gonna take it day by day and see how it goes. So thank you guys. Have a good night, and we'll see you tomorrow, 7 to 9 p.m. And I'll be also releasing my videos, so keep your guys' eye out for those. And thanks for watching. You guys have a good night.